What makes some bicycles so expensive, and is it really worth it? Maybe you're new to cycling and you've walked into a bike shop and you've seen bikes for $1,000, $2,000, maybe $5,000 or $6,000, and you've wondered why would someone spend that much money on a bicycle? Or maybe you've been riding for a while and it's time to upgrade your bike and you're wondering just how much money you need to spend on a bicycle. In this video, we're going to talk about what makes some bicycles so expensive and do you really need to spend that much money? There's a mantra I've heard when buying a bicycle that really applies to this topic. Light, durable, and cheap. Pick two. Think about that. Now in summary, an expensive bike is going to be lighter, it's going to be stiffer, and it's going to perform very well. If it's a mountain bike, it's also going to have suspension that performs very well. The material used in bicycle frames and components is very important in terms of its performance and ride quality. There's aluminum, there's steel, there's titanium, and there's carbon fiber. I'm not going to take time to go into the ride qualities of each of these, but carbon fiber tends to dominate the most expensive bicycles because of its exceptional ride quality. Not only is it light, it's also stiff and it absorbs chatter on roads and trails. It's also very expensive to make. So what I want to do in this video is look at the different components of a bicycle and talk about what makes them more expensive on the higher end bikes. I'm going to use my Niner RKT9 RDO as my example in this video. This is a bike that retails for $6,500. The frame alone is a $3,000 frame. This is a full carbon frame and it's of course a full suspension mountain bike. At the heart of any bicycle is the frame, and it's generally what makes the bikes so expensive. Generally, a frame is going to be the heaviest component of a bicycle. Carbon fiber frames are going to be stiff. That means when you sprint, the bike is not going to flex, and the power that you put into the pedals is going to go directly to the wheels and make the bike faster. It's also going to be lighter. So when you're going up a climb, whether you're in the saddle or out of the saddle, a stiffer frame and a lighter frame is going to climb faster. Most road or trail vibration is going to go from the ground up into the frame and then eventually to the rider. Carbon fiber has the unique property of absorbing some of that chatter so you don't have as much vibration getting to you as you ride your bike. And of course, a carbon fiber frame is going to be light. This particular frame weighs less than 5 pounds for a full suspension mountain bike. Some carbon fiber road frames can be less than 2 pounds. I consider wheels to be the second most important component of a bicycle. Again, you're going to find more expensive wheels on the more expensive bikes. And generally they're going to be made out of carbon, whether they're road, cyclocross, or mountain bike wheels. These Stan's Valors are a very good example. This is a wheel set that costs a little under $2,000. It's made of carbon fiber. And these wheels are built to be stiff laterally, in other words, going side to side, so they're very precise in your turning. But they also absorb a little bit of bumps on the trail. And that is a very good quality that you're going to find in carbon fiber wheels. And of course, they're light. This particular wheel set is about 1,400 grams. Also, on more expensive bikes, you're going to find higher quality tires. These Schwalbe Rocket Ron mountain bike tires cost about $90 each. Higher quality tires will have higher TPI or higher thread per inch. A 120 TPI tire is going to be more supple than a 60 TPI tire. That suppleness is going to allow the tire to deform over small bumps, which is going to make it more comfortable. It's also going to give it more grip. Also, on more expensive bicycles, you're going to find carbon fiber handlebars. Not only are they light, but they're also stiff to allow for very precise steering. And you'll typically find a carbon fiber seat post. One of the unique properties of carbon fiber is it can be built to flex where it needs to flex and be stiff where it needs to be stiff. So a handlebar, you want to be stiff, but a seat post, you actually want to have it built so it has a little bit of flex to it. That will allow a little bit of movement in the saddle to provide some suspension, which is really important in cyclocross bikes, gravel bikes, and hardtail mountain bikes. One component that can make a huge difference in terms of comfort is the saddle. And a saddle can be very light or it can be very heavy depending on how much it costs. More expensive saddles are going to have titanium rails, which again is really going to reduce the weight of the saddle and the overall weight of the bike. If you're somewhat unfamiliar with higher end bikes, you might walk into Walmart and see a really wide saddle and think it's going to be very comfortable. However, those saddles can typically be less comfortable over longer rides because they might rub your inner thighs and hit different pressure points. A higher end saddle is going to be really shaped so that it does not hit pressure points, and the skinnier saddles can actually be more comfortable over a long ride. Higher end mountain, gravel, and cyclocross bikes today will have hydraulic disc brakes. You're even starting to see them today on road bikes. Hydraulic disc brakes have some unique qualities that make them superior to most cable actuated brakes. They have a lot of modulation. That means when you squeeze the brake lever, you're going to be able to regulate the power. So if you squeeze the lever a little bit, you get a little bit of power, and if you squeeze it hard, you get a lot more power. And what that does is it prevents that on-off feeling, which keeps you from locking up the wheel and really making it easier for you to dial in just the right amount of power. Hydraulic disc brakes also perform better in wetter conditions, and they actually require less maintenance. With cable actuated brakes, you can get grime and dirt inside the housing, which will require more maintenance. I only have to bleed my brakes maybe once a year, if that. Higher end brakes will also be easier to adjust. For example, these Shimano XT brakes can be adjusted so that the lever can be closer to the handlebar or further away just by turning this knob. The drivetrain of a bicycle is very important in terms of its performance. A drivetrain includes your cranks, your chain, your shifters and your derailleurs, and your cassette. Higher end drivetrains are going to be built with more technology, such as ramps on this cassette, which allow the chain to go up and down very smoothly and very precisely. Common on a lot of styles of bikes today are drivetrains that only have one front chainring, and so you only have one shifter, which shifts the rear. These one-by systems, as they're called, allow for more simplicity, and it can reduce weight in some areas, such as having only one shifter and only one chainring in the front. However, it typically calls for a cassette in the back that has to be bigger. To keep the weight down of those bigger cassettes, many of the cogs today are built with titanium, which again can be very expensive. Higher end bikes will also have more technology built into the rear derailleur, or changer as it's called in some countries. For example, this Shimano XT rear derailleur has a lever that you can engage to make the spring stiffer. What that does is it reduces chain slap. In other words, the chain moving up and down as you're riding. Not only does that protect your frame, but it also allows for the chain to stay on the front chainring better. If a chain drops off a chainring, it can not only damage your frame, but can also cause a crash. If you're looking at a mountain bike, the suspension has a huge role in terms of the performance and the ride quality of your bike. One of the ways that higher end suspension has better performance is it has more adjustments. In this video, I'm not going to go into the different terminologies like rebound damping, compression damping, but just know that higher end suspension will have more adjustments to better fine-tune your ride for the qualities that you're looking for. The fork on this mountain bike costs about $850. A more expensive fork is going to not only have the adjustments that I talk about, but it's also going to be very durable and it's going to be very smooth. If you've ever ridden a mountain bike that costs $500, typically the fork is going to be very harsh. It's going to top out really harshly, and it's also going to be very heavy. This fork weighs about 3 pounds, which is very light for a front fork on a mountain bike. Full suspension mountain bikes, or mountain bikes that have rear suspension, are also going to be more expensive than hardtail mountain bikes. On average, you'll find that a full suspension mountain bike costs about $1,000 more than what's known as a hardtail mountain bike, or one without rear suspension. Not only does rear suspension allow for the rear tire to absorb bumps, increasing comfort, but it also allows the rear tire to stay on the ground more. And when you're descending, having that tire stay on the ground is going to allow the braking performance to be a lot better, so you can carry more speed, especially going into corners. Technology has really increased in mountain bikes particularly, and one of the newer technologies is wider spacing, and it's typically referred to as boost spacing. So front axles that have boost spacing typically are 115 millimeters wide, and the rear axles are typically 148 millimeters wide. Those wider axles allow for a stiffer bike. It also allows frame builders to make shorter chain stays, and particularly in mountain bikes, that really increases the agility of the bike and makes it handle better. So all of these components that I mentioned, the frame, the wheels, the handlebar, the seat post, saddle, brakes, drivetrain, tires, all come together to make a more expensive bike lighter, stiffer, faster, and that's going to perform very well. The handling is going to be sharper, it's going to be more comfortable to ride. So whether an expensive bike is worth it to you, it's really going to depend on what you want to do on a bicycle. If all you want to do is ride down a bike path and look at the scenery and get out with friends or family, you don't need a very expensive bike. If you like to ride mountain bikes but you just want to get out into the woods, pedal around, just be out in nature, not really concerned about your speed, then you don't need a very expensive mountain bike. And of course, there are some of us who demand a lot of performance out of a bicycle, and those are the ones that are going to need to spend more money to make that happen. If you're a racer, obviously you demand the highest performance you can get for your budget. But you don't have to be a racer to be in that category. You can be someone who just likes to go fast and enjoy the feeling of a light and stiff bicycle. I want to close out this video by giving a few buying tips. First of all, if you're looking for a road bike, generally you can get a pretty decent aluminum road bike today for about $700 to $800. Once you get up into carbon fiber, you're going to be looking at about $1,500. But fortunately, if you're a road cyclist, you don't get a whole lot more performance for bikes that are over $2,000. Yes, there is a performance increase, but the performance increase curve compared to how much money you spend, I found really starts to decrease as you get above that $2,000 price range. If you're a mountain biker, if you have kind of a lower budget, you probably want to look at a hardtail mountain bike. Those you can get pretty decent for about $700 to $800. If you're looking at full suspension, you're going to need to spend at least $1,000, probably more like $1,500 to get a decent full suspension mountain bike. Full suspension mountain bikes that are cheap are really not worth it, and you want to look more at a hardtail. Now, if you are looking at a hardtail, I would recommend looking at a 29er mountain bike or even the new 27.5 plus size tires, which are a fatter tire but have a ton of grip and are very comfortable. And if I were getting a hardtail, that's definitely what I would look at. I've said this in some of my other videos and I'll repeat it again in this one. If you're trying to choose between a carbon or aluminum frame or carbon and aluminum wheels, I would put my money into carbon wheels and aluminum frame. That's going to give the best ride quality because wheels make the biggest difference in terms of steering precision and speed, because a lighter wheel is going to get up to speed quicker. Rotational weight makes the biggest difference in a ride quality. In other words, a frame does not rotate, it's stationary. So wheels, since they rotate, are going to be getting up to speed faster if they're lighter. So I hope this video helped you out in your bike buying process. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below, and if it was helpful, if you don't mind, give it a thumbs up for me. Thanks for watching.